It's not easy living on a dying planet, but it is easy to feel overwhelmed when it comes to making changes and taking action to try and save it. Where do you start? Is it even worth it? Can you really make a difference? Welcome to the Tea on Sustainable Living podcast, where we attempt to answer these questions by spilling the tea on living sustainably in a world that's going to shit. I'm Brandy.
And I'm Hannah. And for years we've been navigating the big, messy grey area of caring about our planet. It hasn't always been smooth sailing, but we're not giving up yet. So, brew yourself a cup of tea, get comfy, and let's try and navigate that grey area together.
Hello, Give-A-Shitters. This is Brandy.
And this is Hannah. And you're listening to the Tea on Sustainable Living podcast.
Which episode number is this?
27.
Yes. Welcome to episode 27.
I'm a little bit sleepy.
We both are. I have my cold leftover pizza from our dinner last night. Ooh, I like your coffee mug.
Thank you. It's Gaudi inspired. I got it in the Sagrada Familia.
Oh, nice. I think I was just talking to someone about that the other day. It's finally going to be finished soon, right? They have an end date.
I think it was supposed to be 2026, but then the pandemic happened.
Okay.
But I think it is. I mean, when did I go? I went last year, and they still had quite a lot to do, but it was also very, inside, it felt pretty complete. I think they had 2 towers to finish, and then the front porch, which is a slightly weird one because basically they have to move people out of housing to build it. But the people who own or rent those housing know that it was part of their contracts when they either bought or whatever that housing. It was built in that and they got they paid a lower price because at some point they would have to move out. But that's the last thing to be built because they have to didn't kick people out or kick apply the contract.
Apply the previously agreed upon.
Right, in the 70s or whatever, 60s or 70s, because obviously when it started to be built, it was just kind of there wasn't really anything built around it. Right. Anyway, fun fact listener.
Yeah, fun fact. Stay tuned for a future episode because I think we're going to talk about travel soon and the effects of local or heavily heavily tourized places. I don't know how to say that.
Tourist. Yeah, anyway.
Whatever. And Barcelona, will probably come up. So anyway, stay tuned. Today, however, we're talking about banking and investing. I think I had this noted down a while ago, and then I kept saying in episodes that it kind of came up a little bit. I was like, remind me when we do this episode. So this, I think, was primarily sparked by before I even moved to Spain, I knew there was a bank I wanted to switch to called Triodos Bank, which I think they're actually a UK bank that has branches here. Or maybe they're, I don't know if I'm getting that right. If they're based, they are based somewhere, they're European bank is their primary location, but they've won all these awards, British awards for banking and being, they call themselves one of the world's most sustainable banks, and they finance things like renewable energy, sustainable farming, education, charity, social housing. They don't finance fossil fuels, fast fashion, weapons, tobacco, deforestation. So I wanted to, they had branches in Spain, and I knew I wanted to try to switch to that when I moved here, just to, I don't know, put my money somewhere that finances these good things and doesn't finance these bad things. But I struggled a lot to switch. The first summer I moved here, I hadn't met you yet, so I don't know if I ever told you my struggles of this, of going to the branch to try to open an account, and I didn't really understand why it wasn't an easy go ahead and open this checking account, or I think also known as a current account. So I went back multiple times to try to understand what the issue was, and I would bring my passport, and I would bring this document, and I just didn't really understand why they were having such trouble giving me an account. But I think basically it's because I'm a foreigner, because I'm not Spanish, and that, I don't know, there are certain rules I guess you have to follow when someone a foreigner opens an account. And I tried again. I thought I figured out what that was because the bank I am with had me fill out like a certain form. I think it's specific to like Americans having foreign accounts. So then I went back to Triodos, like, hey, I think I know what the issue is. Like, I have this form that you need me to fill out, and she seemed more like she opened like this big like kind of like binder of like this reference binder, and seemed to be like, okay, I think we can do this. But she was like, you don't need to fill out this form. I was like, are you sure? I'm pretty sure I need to fill out this form. So we left. I think she was going to reach out to someone and get back to me. And then I came home to an email that was like, can you fill out this form? The form that I said I needed to fill out. So I did. And then I was just ghosted. Like, she just never responded. So I gave up because it's one of those things. Yeah. Like if people are going to do the easy option because like jumping through hoops. So to actually like sit down and see what impact the money in your bank accounts like do have on that short list of things that they don't like finance or invest in. But then also that kind of led me to like investing.
Right.
Yeah, I thought we'd just talk about what
pensions as well, I guess.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about, because we talk about like spending money and kind of voting with your dollar when you can, where you can, but have you ever thought about like where you keep your money, like your bank accounts and your investments or pensions?
No, not especially. It's a really good point. It's an interesting thing. I have, but in a different. I have, but haven't done anything about it, and in a different context, which was I grew up in a somewhat Quaker family. So Quakers are generally pacifists. So one of their big things is that they don't want to, it comes up in conversation that they don't want to be having money or mortgages or pensions or whatever with banks that will invest in arms trade, which is another big area that a lot of banks do invest in arms. So I've heard about it talked about within that context. And that's something I've kind of like been semi-aware of, but without really applying it to my own situation.
How much control do you have? Like, because pensions are like a big thing in Britain. So how much control do you have about like where that money is invested?
I think you can. Yeah, I don't really know, honestly, because I haven't worked. I think I have some very minimal pensions contributions from summer work that I've done, but because I moved to Spain, I moved to Spain before I'd ever worked full time in the UK, and then that's one area that just for personal investment I've been like putting off sorting out, but now I'm nearing 30. I'm like, I should probably work out pensions. So yeah, I think you can. I don't really know. I'm sorry, this isn't a very helpful answer.
No, it's okay. And to do like a bit of a disclaimer in the beginning, we are not financial experts. Experts. Not speak this wording. Advisors, whatever. No part of this episode is intended as financial advice. Just sharing what we do know. We have learned, have yet to learn, how this all relates to climate, etc. So, and it's such a personal thing.
Where have you, when you've done your research, what kind of places have you looked, Brandy?
So I've looked at, sorry, I'm just gonna tweak my volume a little bit because I think I'm a bit too loud.
Is mine okay? Should I move my microphone?
I think yours is okay. I'm just saying like
okay.
My I'm like kind of going off the charts. Anyway, I don't remember where I've looked in the past. I know what I was reading from Triodos Bank earlier, that was from their website. And I know I've heard various like news, kind of, news outlets and articles and stuff about like this one I just pulled up again. This one is from Rainforest Action Network. Just for example, overall fossil fuel financing remains dominated by 4 U.S. banks: JP Morgan Chase, Citi, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America. So depending on where you're located, may or may not have heard of those. Some of these I think are kind of all over. I have credit cards with 2 of these banks, so a little T. But the Wells Fargo one is like my oldest credit card. And I know there's like a whole community that is like against having credit scores. Okay. I feel more comfortable having a good credit score. I'm not prepared to like get rid of all credit. So having my oldest card remain like stay open, I have like one recurring charge. And then I do have the Citi card, which is through American Airlines, which is how I get miles to like help cover some of my like flights to go visit, my people back in the US. So yeah, I have two of those four. And
I guess that is potentially one of those things, isn't it? That some of presumably the more sustainable banks, or the banks that are being set up specifically in that way, are smaller and newer, and so maybe don't offer the same kind of benefits or products as some of the larger banks.
Yeah, the larger banks, they have more of a presence. There's more branches, and I don't know, just easier.
Right.
And I don't know, a lot of people are likely already with these banks, and switching banks is a pain because you have to, do things. You have to sit down and either research or fill out stuff online or go to a branch. So I get that.
I definitely. It's interesting having this conversation, because I just don't think it's anything that I've really thought about. I think, I've got 2 bank accounts in the UK. One which was like the one set up for me as a child, which was just where my parents banked, and then one before I went to uni, which I just chose because it gave like it was like the classic, like, sign up as a uni student and you get like a 4-year rail card, or whatever it was. And then in Spain, I also have 2 bank accounts. All these bank accounts, but no money. No, but I just kind of chose the one that was like easy for foreigners and was kind of advertised to foreigners, and then they had like English speaking
same
people, and they obviously did a good campaign, because I feel like pretty much everyone I know who came to Madrid around a similar time to me has that same bank.
Yeah, everyone who did the same program that brought me here is at the same bank, because they made it easy for us. So of course, exactly. You're in a foreign country, you're going to go with the easy option.
And then another one I did open fairly recently, but I also didn't really think about more deeply. It's just like what benefits they had for me. But it's true, of course. So I guess particularly when it comes to investments or pensions or things where you've got bigger chunks of money saved, that's money that banks play around with more, right?
Yeah. So going into this episode, I wanted to talk about, keeping your, like your checking account or current account, credit card accounts. Like I was bringing in this like kind of guilt of like not trying hard enough to switch to like the more kind of ethical or socially responsible banks. But then when I was doing research, which article was it? And of course it'll be linked in the show notes. I think it was this one, BBC, Why Your Banking Habits Matter for the Climate. Where was it? Many of these banks also offer current or checking and savings accounts to ordinary customers, although this does not typically mean your money is being used for fossil fuel investments. This is because in most countries, consumer banking arms of banks are separated from their investment arms. The money sitting in your bank account is instead normally used for loans to other customers, such as mortgages, rather than investments. So it's worth looking into your bank, your country, your situation. But as a general statement, like I didn't realize this. I thought like the money that's in my accounts are being used by the banks to do whatever they want,
Yeah.
More guns, more fossil fuels, like just, investing or financing whatever they want. But so I'm gonna take a deeper dive and see like if this is true for me. But as a general statement, that seems like investments, like individual investments could be the like more impactful thing you can do, because I don't keep balances on my credit cards. I treat them like debit cards. So I had it in my head, okay, well, my banks aren't like making fees for me or getting fees for me and like using that for whatever they want. But my investments, I have switched to something called Wealthfront, which I think it's just a general investing platform, like a robo type of investor. Where you just choose like, I don't know, an index fund or whatever. And if you don't know what an index fund is, just Google it. It's just a way of investing in like multiple things. But you only have to like choose one thing.
Okay.
That's the most simple way I can put it. So they have an option to do like ESG funds, which is environmental, social, and governance. And I forget what exactly they like screen for, but I think it's the typical. They like it doesn't support like fossil fuels and arms, etc., tobacco, those sorts of things. So I have that there, and that is obviously money that sits there. So after doing like a bit of this like light research, I feel better that like I've at least like made that switch. And I pulled over like whenever I worked in like a regular job in the US, I like switched all of that over. Like I rolled all of that over to this account and chose the like ESG option, which I think when they first came out, they like maybe weren't performing as well. And I think I even spoke to an financial advisor once, and she's like, if you're willing to like not see quite the same returns as regular like index funds or whatever, that this is, you know, like ESG options like are still a decent option. But I think now they're performing just as well as, if not slightly better than kind of the general stuff. I don't know if I'm getting any of this wrong. If any of you listening are financial experts, let us know. But they seemed, it's just, instead of picking the regular option, you can choose like, at least at Wealthfront, the ESG option. And from what I understand there, it's just as good. So yeah, I don't know if this has kind of like eased some of the guilt of not being able to switch to the banks I want. Because then it kind of turned into a question for me of like, okay, even though this money might not be like, you know, directly financing fossil fuel industry and as well as others, because apparently banks also like will finance other high emitting business sectors like steel, cement, petrochemicals, manufacturing, transport, real estate, etc. That was from banktrack.org. But is it still a matter of like kind of putting my money where my mouth is? Like,
yeah, I guess even if your money isn't being used, I guess by being a member of that bank in some way is somewhat supporting what they're doing.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, every time I pull out this card, it's like an advertisement for that company. So I don't know. I don't know if it's, you know, it's like walking around wearing a branded thing, like, you know, whether you walk around with a shirt that says Shein or Primark versus like, I don't know.
Right. And I guess as well, if I guess most banks don't have a particular, you know, their objective is to make more money. And so as long as they've still got and have customers, so as long as they have like the same amount of customers, like, does it really matter to them? Do they care about what they're doing? I mean, maybe, but
I mean, I think that one of the articles, I think it went on to say, this does not mean you as an individual customer are powerless to influence the investment behavior of your chosen banks. Your chosen bank. I think that article, that was the BBC one, went on to talk about how you can like, you know, let them know.
Yeah.
It's like any major company, whether it's a major like fast fashion brand, they're in it to make money. So as long as there's a market for what they're selling, they're going to keep doing it. But if the general trends shift to something else, they need to stay profitable. So they're going to shift with that trend. So is me like switching banks and whipping out a different credit or debit card going to have enough of like a ripple effect and like play a part in like shifting that trend?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, you never know. I've this is like off topic, but my card for one of my banks is like translucent, and everyone comments on it. They're like, when I go to pay, and they're like, oh, like I've had multiple people comment on it, and I would never have thought that anyone would even notice that. I mean, they're not doing. I don't think they're really connecting it with a bank, but it's true. Like maybe subconsciously.
Yeah. Well, that is a thing.
People
like
notice, you know.
I've seen like various credit card companies advertising the like higher end cards as like, you know, metal or just like sleeker looking, and that is like supposed to be like an appealing kind of perk to having that account, that card, is that it looks nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I also go back with like so that my main credit card is like a travel card and I get miles, and then I think, is that influencing me like prioritizing flights because I have the miles? And we'll probably talk about this in like our upcoming like travel episode, about like a recent trip I booked because I had the miles, because I use this card for everything. So but I use this card just because that is a perk. And
Yeah.
I wonder if I
complex.
switched. Like at one point, I think it was before I moved, I have like this whole spreadsheet that I made of like various travel cards, and I was going to start with like this card I have now, and then have it, I think, before the fee kicked in, and then switch to this next card that had like good rewards. And then there was like one more that like, I think it's a Chase card actually, that like they're like higher end travel card. I forget what it's called, Sapphire or whatever. I don't know. We're not endorsing like any specific credit card. And yeah, definitely not sponsored by anyone.
If that's not, I'm really plainly clear.
No. But then I ended up...
If you want to sponsor it.
Yeah. But I ended up just sticking with this card because it just works for my situation. And the airline I typically travel to go back to the States. And because I use the card so much, it doesn't usually end up covering at least one leg of the trip. So...
Yeah.
So I don't know. But of course, like if I have it, that option's there. I'm going to use it.
Yeah. I mean, I would use it too, though.
Yeah.
That's...
But maybe it's the time to switch.
It's tricky.
I don't know. But then they like keep you in because they like increase your limit so much. And then it is, even not using it, nice knowing that like it's there if you do need it. Which I know there are obviously other ways to like kind of prepare for things, like have savings, but to just have that extra kind of layer. So I don't know. I don't know if that's like a high priority thing. Because like, is the like investment side of it enough?
Right. Yeah, I guess
options, if people talk about like credit unions and like that is usually a more like local kind of option. So that's definitely worth looking into if that's an option for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of this also connects into bigger questions, which we're not informed enough to comment on right now, but like, you know, your position within capitalism, like how you feel about the way international like financial systems are organized, like those things can also like tie into like why you might prefer a cooperative way of like banking or but I don't feel qualified to comment on that right now.
So I feel like my main takeaway from like kind of preparing for this episode was that maybe my like guilt and not being able to switch my bank was not misplaced, but maybe not like was like smaller potatoes than like directly investing in funds that do support the things that I want them to support and don't support things I don't want them to support.
Right.
Finance,
and I guess maybe that's like a good thing, you know, because this is at the end of the day, like this is something that we can change. You know, you can change who you bank with most of the time. So I guess it's like, but it does feel like it just feels kind of like a pain in the ass. Like you don't really want to do it. So like maybe kind of starting from like the highest impact thing, you know, if you're going to change one thing over, like maybe that'll be like your pension or your like investments, if you have those things. And then like going down to like your current account rather than like changing your current account and being like, oh, I'm done now because that was so much effort.
Yeah, like maybe wherever you currently like have investments, pensions, whatever, like does that like company have an option to switch like which funds?
Right.
I think that was kind of all I had to say about this topic. Did you?
Yeah, it was really...
any other thoughts or questions?
No, I think it's a really interesting. I don't know. Is that thing? I don't know. It's one of those things where I just feel like it's easy to kind of it's easier to concentrate on like your smaller individual actions. And obviously this is an individual action, but it's just like kind of a system that you bought into, and it's really easy to have not, or like I haven't really thought about it before. Maybe that's me just being a bit oblivious. But
I think it's easy to not think about if no one around you is talking about it.
Right, exactly. It's just like, oh, you have your bank and you just, you know, that's where your money is. And that's just kind of how things work.
Yeah, I think bottom line, there are other options. It's just worth looking into what those options are for you.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look into my investment funds again, just see where exactly. Can't remember if I'm not good at like retaining information beyond like a check mark or an X.
Yeah.
So I've switched to this account. So I think I did the research before, but just can't remember. But I'm gonna look into that again, and then I don't know. And then either feel like that's enough or see if there's another option.
Yeah.
Banking wise. Because I think that's, if it doesn't, even though it's not like the highest impact thing, if it's, I noted this in the outline, like, but aren't we still supporting them by continuing to bank with them?
Right.
Despite the likelihood that our money is separate from like their investment.
And on like an individual level, I think, obviously any action that we do to make like the various parts of our lives more in line with our values is like a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, while still maintaining the like perspective that like individual action isn't
the biggest issue here,
and has been made to be the issue by the people at play who don't want us to like focus on them, the real issue, which I think we talked about in a recent episode. That was not a very coherent way to say it, but yeah, it's this like constant, that is like the constant gray area, isn't it, of like wanting to make changes, but the quicker win is in your own lives, even though it's like those few, that small number of like companies that are distracting us from like their impact by making us think that it's on us to change things. Not that it's that we can't. So it's like maintaining that, like it's like a tightrope walk, the balance of like I can make these changes, but also make you make changes, you the big companies.
Right.
I don't know. I don't have the best balance, so I don't think I'm the best to walk in the tightrope. Because I can really go down rabbit holes of like, the individual side of things.
Yeah, I mean, but also if this is like a straightforward change for you, it's just like something that requires like time and effort, then why not change it? But then there's other circumstances where it's difficult to change, but
so
right, so and then no, it's fine, we're good.
We're good, that's it. Change your banks and we're out. No, we'll leave all links and resources mentioned, but also others that I found in the show notes at theteonsustainableliving.com/episode 27. And I had an idea to start leaving like the option to leave like a voice recording. It's through SpeakPipe, like in each show notes like page.
Oh, I love it. Let's do it.
So that it's not it's directing everyone, just to one. But instead of going here, you go here, but then also go to the contact page to leave us a voice note. So when you check out the show notes, hopefully there will be that embedded. Just click record, leave us a voice note, let us know what you thought about the episode. Where do you bank? Have you switched banks? Do you use credit union? Not? Have you switched your investments to more ESG funds? Or are you like, what the heck? I still don't know what the heck you're talking about. Let us know. And see you in the next one.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Tea on Sustainable Living podcast.
Now, go share it with a friend,
a coworker,
a partner,
a family member,
or whoever.
A pet, your cat,
someone on the street, whoever you think could use a little more support on their sustainability journey. Share it.
You can send them over to our website, theteonsustainableliving.com. And while you're there, check out the show notes for more info on today's topic.
All right, give a shitters. See you later. Get it? See you later, as in see you later? So funny.
Brandy.